Hello everyone, welcome to my tutorial. So we already know how to create the web project. Now is the time to create our first servlet. If you look at the architecture that I defined before, we are going to create a login page. So in order to do that, what we need to do is create a controller. And as I said before, that our controller is going to be extending to the HTTP servlet. So let's say that my controller name is login controller. So I'm going to write my first servlet like this. Public class login controller extend HTTP servlet. Okay, and as I said before, that this HTTP servlet is an abstract class, and we are going to use this one because this has everything that we need to create our servlet. Okay, and we are going to have few methods over here. One is the init method, one is the do post method, and other one is the do get method. Okay, so these are the three methods that I'm going to use in my login controller. Now we need few annotations over here. The annotation is written like this, and we are going to use the annotation web servlet. So this annotation of web servlet means that this is a servlet. Okay, so the purpose of the annotation web servlet is that to say that this class is a servlet class. Now there are a few other things over here, and we are going to use what is called the URL pattern. Okay, and this is going to be like this. So what does it mean? That whenever we are going to write this HTTP local host port 8080, and then I'm writing J104. In this case, the server knows that where to direct my request. So this is in my browser. Okay, so this is in my browser. I'm typing. Okay, I'm typing in a blank browser like this, HTTP localhost 8080 J104. So this request is going to the Tomcat web server, and the server knows that what is mapped with J104. In this case, you can see that J104 is the root directory. Okay, so this is my root, or we can say that this is the context root. Okay, so this is what happens, that the server knows that this information or this request is invoked at the context level, and then it tries to look at that which servlet is having or is mapping to the root, and this URL pattern is mapping to the root because there is nothing attached to it, just the slash and within the double quote. That means this is my root directory. So then my controller is invoked. And in this case the controller is login controller. Now the login controller, we now see that what kind of action it is, or what kind of method it is invoked. Is it a get method or is it a post method? And then the HTTP servlet will then define that, okay, since this is a do post method, let's move my request to the do post method, and it will work accordingly. Okay, so now let's go and see the actual coding. This is my login controller, and you can see that this public class login controller extending HTTP servlet, and then I have this annotation web servlet, and which means that this class is a servlet class, and then within that I have put something. It is called the URL pattern, and this URL pattern is the slash backslash that means that this is mapped to the root. And then I have put some other stuff, that is the init parameters, and I have used the web init param annotation to define a parameter. The name of the parameter is page name and the value is admin. So that means these parameters are coming as a key value pair. And the next thing that we would like to see, that this is the serial version, and we have to put it, and the default is 1L. Okay, so that's it. And then you can see that I have the init method, and within the init method I didn't put anything. Generally this init method is invoked only once when the servlet is created, and within this init method we are going to do what? We are going to initialize some parameters if we would like. So that means, let me write it over here, one time invocation, okay, and used for initialization. Okay, but at this point we are not initializing anything. I just put the init method in order to show that what it is doing or what it can do. And then we have a do post method, so it will be coming over here in the do post method. It's going invoking the do get method, and over here if we come to the do get method, there is some other stuff that I'm going to talk in the later tutorial, but you can see that there is a login method. So it comes to the login method and it is doing a request.getDispatcher. So now if we go over here again, and let me create a new one. So that means our this http localhost 8080/j104. This is my localhost, is my local domain name or server, and this is the port address. Okay, now when it is coming, it is looking for this path, and the server is forwarding it to the login controller. Okay, within the login controller we have a login method, and then when the login method is invoked, then there is something called the request dispatcher. So this request dispatcher is rendering all information, or it's basically moving my next action to a JSP file, and in this case the JSP is the login.jsp. Okay, so it's rendering, basically the servlet is now rendering everything to the login.jsp, and we can see the login.jsp in the browser. So now let's go and see again over here. You can see that the login method is doing what? Request.get request dispatcher, and it's forwarding it to the user login. And what is user login? Is the login.jsp. So that means it's rendering its information to the login.jsp, and this is what we have, or we already know now. There are two components. One is the controller and the other one is the view. Remember, we are talking about MVC. So the model part I haven't talked yet, and I'll talk in the later tutorial, but we can now see that the view and controller. So it's coming to the controller, and the controller is dispatching it or rendering the information to the view, and in this case this is the login.jsp page. So now let's run it, and in order to run, let's go to the server, and if I double click over here, I just need to see that if everything is okay or not. So this is what I have shown you before, and then right click and then you can see that there is something restart in debug or restart, so you can do both. Okay, and there is another one, is called the add and remove. So if you click on that, you can see that this is the Eclipse already created the war file or the project for us. So what we have to do is, first time it will be appearing on the left side, and then you have to just add it, and whenever you are adding, it will be coming over here and good to go. Okay, so now if I'm going to run my servlet or my application, so it's going to be like this. What is username and password? Okay, so this is my login page, and how this login page is coming, we are going to the controller first. The controller is dispatching the information to where? To the login page, and this is what the login page looks like. Okay, so that's all for today's tutorial. Thank you.